Her son knelt, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "Please forgive me." She handed him the mic he once used to call her old news. An hour later, he was charged with trying to steal from her trust. The woman who raised him was never listed on paper, but now she's the one rewriting the record. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The morning air over the Ohio campus buzzed with sunlight and pride. Camera shutters snapped in rhythm. Graduates milled in gowns too big and dreams too loud, and parents craned their necks for a better view. In the back row of the bleachers, seated between a crying toddler and a man live streaming on Facebook, Linda Morgan sat still, her hands folded tight in her lap. She hadn't been invited. She wasn't even sure if she should have come. But when your son graduates summa cum laude from a prestigious university, you show up, even if you're not listed in the program. From behind her sunglasses, Linda scanned the stage where the faculty and graduates filed in, her gaze catching on the familiar slope of Ryan's shoulders. Her breath caught. The last time she saw him was Christmas 2 years ago. 15 rushed minutes, a stiff side hug, and a gift bag he never opened. He hadn't seen her today, or maybe he had, and just decided not to wave. People clapped. Cell phones rose in unison. The announcer's voice boomed, "And now our student-elected commencement speaker, Ryan Langston." Linda blinked. Langston, not Morgan. He'd taken his father's surname after the custody ruling. A formality, they'd said. Still, it stung every time she heard it. Ryan stepped to the podium, tall and composed, the model of poise in his navy gown and gold honor cords. His smile lit up the jumbotron screen above the stage. The crowd hushed. He leaned into the mic. "Good morning, faculty, families, friends, and those who showed up anyway." Polite laughter rippled. "I stand here today because of the people who believed in me, one especially, the person who stayed up with me during SAT prep, who pushed me through when I nearly failed freshman bio, who always believed I could become something." Linda sat a little straighter. "That person," Ryan said, looking down at the front row, "is my mom, Sharon Langston." Sharon stood, blonde hair perfect, pastel dress wrinkle-free. She blew him a kiss. The audience clapped. Linda didn't. Ryan continued, voice warm. "Sharon's not my biological mom, but she is my real one." A pause. Then he chuckled, as if anticipating pushback. "Some people still ask about that, and I tell them she's not really my mom by blood, but she's the reason I'm here today." Linda didn't move, not even a blink. Her palm hovered over the small soundboard she'd brought, an artifact from her freelance AV days. It was connected to the live feed running through the venue's speakers. She'd asked an old colleague to rig it for her, just in case, just to feel like she had a voice again. Now her fingers trembled above the controls. The crowd clapped again, louder this time. Sharon dabbed her eye with a tissue, performing grief, love, whatever the moment called for. Linda stared at the woman in the front row. That seat had once been hers. She remembered waiting for Ryan outside the school nurse's office with soup and a folded blanket. Remembered college brochures tucked into his backpack when he said he wasn't ready. Remembered holding his trembling body the night his biological mother, Bethany, collapsed on their kitchen floor. But none of that had made it into today's speech. The applause died down as Ryan launched into the rest of his remarks, peppered with jokes, gratitude, and the occasional quote from Lincoln or Oprah. Linda didn't hear any of it. She was staring at her hands, one of which was still trembling. She didn't feel anger, not yet. Only the quiet humiliation of being erased perfectly publicly without ever being mentioned. Her gaze drifted back to the soundboard. A green LED blinked. Mics still live. She should have turned it off by now, but her fingers froze over the dial. She looked up at the stage just in time to see Ryan lean toward Sharon, thinking the mic was muted. "She's old news," he said, his voice low but cruelly casual. "It's your moment now." Linda's hand didn't move. The speakers across the auditorium popped with static, then cleared, amplifying every syllable of what he thought was private. The audience stilled. Linda's lips parted slightly. Not to speak, just to breathe. Because if no one else was going to tell the truth, maybe it was time she did. A sharp ring of feedback pierced the auditorium, slicing through the applause like a blade through fabric. Then silence. Not the polite kind, not the reverent kind. This was the brittle, choking stillness that follows an open wound. On stage, Ryan stiffened. His smile faltered for the first time all day. He glanced toward the podium mic, tapped it lightly, then cleared his throat. "Looks like our sound team had one too many espressos," he quipped, forcing a grin. "Anyway, back to gratitude. But the audience wasn't laughing. Not really. A few chuckled uncertainly, but the rest shifted in their seats, whispering. Glances were exchanged. Phones were raised, and not for photos. Sharon leaned toward him with an expression somewhere between panic and performance, lips moving fast. Ryan's reply was quiet, meant only for her. She's old news. The mic, still live, caught it again, only this time it didn't pop with static. It was clear, crisp, merciless. Linda saw it happen in real time. The crowd's eyes flicked from Ryan to each other, then to the screen, then back again. One mother in the row ahead of her put a hand over her heart. A young man muttered, "Damn!" under his breath. And still Linda didn't move. Not even when Ryan wrapped up with awkward thanks and a too-quick bow. Not even when the dean gave him a confused side glance as he exited the stage. She just sat there watching her son walk back toward the first row, avoiding everyone's gaze. Only after the next speaker stepped forward, some tenured professor with a voice like molasses, did Linda finally rise. She didn't bother with goodbyes. No one would have heard them anyway over the hum of disbelief that now filled the air like static. Outside, the sun had turned harsh. Linda blinked against it as she crossed the quad, heels crunching on the gravel path, the soundboard still zipped inside her bag like a secret weapon that had fired itself. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she drove in silence, the Ohio highways familiar but distant, like roads through someone else's life. Her hands didn't shake now. They were steady, fingers drumming the steering wheel at red lights, knuckles pale from grip. Back home, she locked the front door behind her, set the soundboard on the counter like something fragile, and went straight to the bedroom. In the corner sat a battered cherrywood dresser. Third drawer down, behind old scarves and an expired passport, was a key taped beneath the wood. She peeled it off with care, then crossed to the linen closet, knelt, and opened the hidden compartment behind the false panel at the base. A fireproof lockbox emerged. She carried it to the dining table and sat down slowly. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the house. The lock clicked open. Inside, manila folders, all labeled in her careful print. Family court, Fulton County, guardianship transfer, custody appeal denied. There were transcripts, affidavits, photos. One of Ryan on his 5th birthday, frosting on his nose, hugging her leg. Another, more recent, showed Sharon smiling beside him at a high school awards banquet. Linda was in the background, off to the side, cropped by the camera's disinterest. She pulled out one paper in particular, an emergency custody affidavit signed the night Bethany died. Linda had been named temporary guardian by request of the mother. It should have meant something. It did mean something, until Sharon came along. Linda leaned back, staring at the brittle ceiling fan above her, willing it not to spin. Her body felt heavy, her chest burned, not from sadness. No, this wasn't grief, it was insult. It was the violation of being erased so perfectly that even her son believed the edit. She turned the document over, saw Bethy's signature, her scrawl in blue ink. Linda will know what to do. She always does. And then Linda smiled. Not big, not angry, but the kind of smile that feels like a door unlocking. Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail. A second later, a ping. New message. Unknown caller. Saw what happened at the ceremony. You don't know me, but I was there that day in court. You were right. They buried the truth. If you want help, I'm in. Linda stared at the screen, then back at the papers. And for the first time in years, she whispered aloud just to herself, "Good." Linda sat at the table long after the message on her phone went dark. The light outside had shifted from gold to gray. Shadows stretched across her laminate floor like slow-moving fingers. She didn't call the number back, not yet. Instead, she reached deeper into the box, beneath affidavits, beneath medical records and visitation logs, and pulled out a white envelope with a faint grease stain in one corner. It had been folded once, carefully, and sealed with clear tape instead of glue. Ryan had written it in high school, maybe sophomore year. His handwriting back then was messier, like he was always in a rush. She hadn't read it in years. She peeled it open with trembling fingers and slid out the letter. The paper was soft from being handled too many times. Dear Mom, I know I don't say this stuff enough, or at all, but I see everything you do, how you work 2 jobs, how you still show up at every game. I know you didn't have to stay after everything, but you did. You're the only one who never left. You're the reason I even believe in myself. So if I ever do something great, it'll be because of you. Not anyone else. Love you, Ryan. Linda didn't mean to cry. The tears came silently, salt on her lips, damp spots blooming across the words like water damage. She pressed her forehead to the paper. A dozen memories flooded back in flashes, too quick to brace for. Ryan vomiting into her hair during a stomach flu at 6. Ryan calling her from the high school nurse's office, just needing the real mom. Ryan handing her this letter at the kitchen table and pretending it was a joke. And now? She's not really my mom. The sentence echoed like a bruise you keep pressing. She set the letter gently aside and reached for her phone. Out of habit, she opened the news app. Her fingers stilled at the headline, Graduation Glory, a Mother's Love Behind the Honor Student. There was a photo, Sharon beaming, holding Ryan's diploma like it was hers. The caption read, Sharon Langston, proud stepmother of graduating senior Ryan Langston, says love, not blood, defines real family. Linda stared at the screen, jaw slack. She clicked the article. It was full of quotes from Sharon. We worked hard together. I never missed a science fair. He's always been mine, in my heart. No mention of Bethany, no mention of Linda, no mention of flu nights or eviction scares or homemade spaghetti on birthdays when money was tight. Just airbrushed fiction packaged for public consumption. Her phone rang. At first she didn't recognize the number, then something about the area code local tugged at her gut. She answered. Miss Morgan? A man's voice, curious, polite, slight rasp. Yes. My name's Jonah Ricks. I was covering the graduation for Ohio Regional News. I was sitting 3 rows behind the sound booth when your son's mic caught that moment. Linda said nothing. I'm not trying to stir gossip, Jonah added quickly, but I have a feeling there's more to the story than what people saw. I've covered enough courts to know when a truth's been rewritten. Linda stood and walked slowly to the window. Outside, a sprinkler ticked across the neighbor's lawn. There is more, she said, voice even. A pause. He waited. She didn't flinch. Would you like the documents? She asked. Jonah's tone changed slightly, more serious now, more focused. You have proof? I have a box full of it. Another silence, but this one was different. It hummed with the tension of a story waking up. I'd like to come by, Jonah said. I want to make sure this gets told right. Linda nodded before realizing he couldn't see her. Tomorrow noon. As she hung up, her eyes drifted back to the letter still open on the table. Ryan had meant it once before all the edits, before the title of Mom was bought and staged. She closed the envelope and tucked it into her bag. Let Sharon publish whatever she wanted. Let the PR spin. Because soon the real story, the raw one, the one that bled, was going public. And it wasn't going to be clean. The next morning, Linda was dressed by 6:30 a.m., gray slacks, sensible flats, and the navy cardigan with elbows starting to pill, the one she wore to every court date. She sat at the kitchen table, nursing lukewarm coffee while her laptop hummed to life. She didn't wait for Jonah. Some truths needed to be unearthed privately before they were handed to the world. The online court archive was clunky. Early 2000s design, too many drop-downs. She clicked through digital cobwebs, civil records, custody transfers, guardianship amendments. Her name came up 13 times. But Sharon's? Sharon Langston appeared in 4 sealed entries. Redacted. All filed under expedited administrative recommendation. Linda leaned in. One entry was marked with a judge's initials. She recognized M.L. Ellen. He'd presided over their case. A man who once told her in chambers, "It's not about who loves the child more. It's about who the law recognizes." At the time, Linda had accepted that, swallowed it, carried it like lead in her gut for years, but now the dates didn't add up. One order had been filed just 8 days after Bethy's funeral. Another, 3 months later, was signed in Sharon's name, not even co-signed by Ryan's father. It shouldn't have been possible unless someone had helped her bend the rules. Linda closed the laptop and reached for the landline. She still had one number memorized from that era. Mr. Clay Doran, former court clerk, retired now. He used to sneak her schedule updates and whisper, "I'm not supposed to tell you this," before sliding her photocopies through the side door. He picked up on the second ring. "Clay, it's Linda Morgan." A beat. Then, well, I'll be damned. They met 30 minutes later at a donut shop off Route 15. He was grayer, slower, but the same eyes, sly and kind, like he never fully trusted the system he worked in. "I shouldn't be talking about any of this," he said between bites of a jelly donut. "But when I saw the clip online, heard what your boy said, it made me sick." Linda slid a folder across the table. "Explain these dates." Clay didn't even flinch. "Knew you'd catch that." He flipped through them slowly, then tapped a finger on the page stamped March 3rd, 2011. This one right here, that's not a normal custody transfer. That's a guardianship override. Emergency. Sharon filed it? Using her connection to Judge M.L. Ellen's wife. They worked at the same consulting firm. Linda blinked. You're serious. I'm saying it was greased, quietly. Someone, probably Sharon, convinced Ryan's dad that removing you was best, painted it like a formality. She wasn't even raising him then. She didn't have to be. All she needed was the law. Linda sat back, fists clenched beneath the table. She erased me, she whispered, legally, surgically, and he believed it. Clay pushed the folder back toward her. You didn't lose because you were wrong. You lost because someone cheated, with a clean suit and the right surname. Linda left the diner before her coffee had even cooled. By the time she got home, the clouds had rolled in, Ohio gray, as if the sky itself had read her files. She went to her desk, opened her laptop again, and created a new document. Statement for Public Record, Draft 1. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't want revenge. Not exactly, but she wanted air. She wanted oxygen blown into the sealed cracks. She wanted someone somewhere to hear her side and not need it polished to believe it. Her fingers began to move. Paragraphs formed, calm, clear, damning. She included timelines, scans of court orders, even screenshots of the letter Ryan once wrote. A small tremor moved through her chest. Would Ryan read it? Would he care? Would he remember? She didn't know. But truth, once let loose, had its own legs. It didn't always run back toward love. As she stared at the last line, unsure whether to end with dignity or fury, her phone lit up again. Voicemail. She hit play. A voice, female, low, unfamiliar but confident, filled the room. I know who you are. I watched the case fall apart. You don't know me, but I know what they did to you. If you want this fixed, I want in. Click. Linda stared at the phone. Not Jonah, not Clay, someone else, and it wasn't a maybe anymore. It was a war call. The woman from the voicemail called herself Avery. They met at a public park just outside Columbus. Neutral ground, crowded enough to stay invisible. Avery was younger than Linda expected, early 30s maybe, with a sharpness in her eyes that didn't match the softness in her voice. She extended a hand. I dated Ryan briefly, a couple years ago. Linda shook it. He never mentioned you. Avery smirked. He wouldn't have. They sat on a weather-worn bench beneath a cluster of maples. Avery opened her purse and slid a thumb drive into Linda's palm. It's all in there. Screenshots, voice notes. He called you the permanent babysitter once, the housekeeper who got too attached. He bragged about how Sharon cleaned things up, said she rewrote the whole script. His words. Linda's chest tightened. Why are you giving me this? Avery shrugged, but her jaw tensed. Because I saw who you were. Not in person, but in the photos. You were always there, just never in focus. At Thanksgiving, science fairs, birthday parties, always behind someone's elbow or blurred in the kitchen, Sharon was always framed perfectly. She pulled out a stack of printed photos, some real, some screenshots from social media timelines. In each one, Linda was present but peripheral, cropped, smiling faintly in the shadows, holding a coat, pouring a drink, behind the scenes of her own motherhood. I just thought, Avery said softly, you should see how much you were edited out. Linda turned the photos over one by one. Her throat felt raw. I'm not trying to hurt him, she finally said. Then don't, Avery replied. Just tell the truth. Let it sting where it needs to. They parted quietly. Avery didn't ask for thanks and Linda didn't offer any, only a nod that said more. That night, Linda didn't sleep. She spent hours scanning old papers into PDFs. She added the speech audio Jonah had sent her, clipped to exactly where Ryan's offhand cruelty landed. She included screenshots from the letter, excerpts from the court filings, and every photo Avery gave her. She created a clean, password-protected folder, labeled it Truth of Record, Ryan Langston's Graduation Narrative. At 3:12 a.m., she sent the link to 3 university email addresses anonymously. One to the registrar's office, one to the communications department, and one to the vice president of donor relations. She didn't add a note. Didn't need to. By Friday morning, Ryan's name had vanished from the university homepage. A cached version of the original story still floated online. Honors graduate delivers speech of the year, but the article now redirected to a 404-page. At noon, Linda refreshed the university's press page and found a new headline, Statement on Commencement Coverage Update. In light of recent documentation and community concern, we have removed previously published highlights related to Mr. Langston's graduation speech. Our institution is committed to authenticity, transparency, and the full honoring of all family narratives. No mention of her, but then again, there didn't need to be. It wasn't a trophy she wanted. It was the deletion of the lie. She leaned back in her chair, blinking at the screen. Her living room felt quieter than usual, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The faint buzz of the refrigerator, the tap of her foot against the rug, the distant sound of someone mowing a lawn 2 houses down, all felt like the soundtrack to a day that had cracked open. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Jonah Ricks. They pulled him. Major Donor called it off. Apparently, she's the grandmother of a single mom. Told the board, "I don't back boys who forget who raised them." Linda laughed, short, almost startled. She picked up the thumb drive again, rolled it between her fingers. There was more where that came from. She had timelines, audio, names, enough to light matches under every glossy lie Sharon ever built. But she paused. She didn't need to burn the whole house down, not yet, just enough to make the windows rattle. Her computer dinged, a new voicemail. She clicked play. This time the voice was unmistakable. "Mom, it's me, Ryan. Please call me. I think we need to talk." Ryan's voicemail sat unopened for 2 hours before Linda played it again. "Please, I think we need to talk. Everything's falling apart. Just stop, okay?" There was no mention of regret, no apology, just fear, panic over control slipping. Linda didn't call back. Instead, she opened her laptop and pulled up a fresh document. The title bar blinked at her like a challenge. "To whom it may concern." A statement from Linda Morgan. Her hands didn't tremble this time. She wrote without flair. No poetic metaphors, no grand declarations, just a clean, irrefutable account. Names, dates, letters, custody filings, court transcripts, voice memos, photographs. A timeline of love that had never made the official record. And woven through the documents, a steady voice. "You may not know my name, that was by design, but you've read about my son. You've seen the smiling photos, the diploma, the woman they said raised him. The story you were fed was curated, edited, branded for consumption. Here's the truth. I raised him. Through every flu night, every bad report card, every lost soccer cleat and call from the principal. I stayed even when the courts didn't. It wasn't angry, it was clear. It was the sound of someone reclaiming authorship. By noon, the document was formatted, footnoted, and saved. She hadn't published it yet, just copied it onto a secure drive. But the air in her living room already felt different, like something irreversible had happened. She was pouring coffee when the phone rang again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. This time it wasn't Ryan. It was Sharon. "Linda, I think we should talk. Somewhere quiet, just you and me. Before this gets any uglier." No apology in her voice either, but it was the first time Sharon had called her directly in over a decade. Linda sat with the phone for a while. She wanted to ignore it, let the silence scream. But some questions couldn't be answered through documents, and some battles had to be looked in the eye. She texted back a single line. Name the place. The restaurant Sharon chose was upscale, understated, polished floors, low lighting, the kind of place that served $18 salads without visible dressing. Linda arrived on time. Sharon was already seated, one manicured hand wrapped around a glass of white wine. She looked up with the faint smile of a woman walking into a courtroom dressed for brunch. "I ordered for both of us," she said lightly. "Hope you still like the beet salad." Linda sat. "Let's not pretend we're friends." Sharon's expression didn't falter. "You always did go straight for the jugular." There was a pause. Then Sharon leaned in slightly, voice low. "I'll admit the audio clip was embarrassing and the donor fallout unfortunate, but let's not blow this out of proportion." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Unfortunate? You erased me." Sharon laughed, soft and rehearsed. "Erased you? You were never officially his mother. I didn't do anything the courts didn't sign off on. You orchestrated it. I secured stability. You bought silence." Sharon sipped her wine. "You just want attention." The words landed like acid. Linda didn't blink. "I want oxygen. I want people to stop choking on the lie you built." Sharon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is this really what you want to do? Drag Ryan through the mud?" Linda leaned forward now, her voice steady and cold. "I'm not dragging him, I'm dragging you. He still has a choice. You don't—" Sharon sat back slowly, jaw tight. The server arrived with their meals. Neither touched them. Linda slid a sealed envelope across the table. "What's that?" A draft of the statement. It's not published yet, but I thought you deserved a sneak peek. Sharon didn't open it. You think this scares me? No, Linda said, standing. I think it reminds you I'm not afraid anymore. As she walked away, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't check it until she was outside, wind curling through her cardigan like applause. Voicemail. 014 from unknown number. I saw your post draft. If you're ready for the next step, I have a story too. One Sharon's kept buried. The voice from the voicemail never left a name, just the hint of a deeper story waiting for oxygen. But Linda didn't wait for it to bloom. She already knew the war had entered a new phase, one no longer confined to sealed court files and closed-door conversations. That evening, she uploaded the full speech footage. No edits, no commentary, no theatrics, just Ryan in his cap and gown, calling Sharon his real mother, then leaning toward her and dismissing Linda like a spent tissue. She's old news. The moment when the audience shifted in their seats, the static, the stunned silence. Then she posted a second clip. Sharon's voice from the restaurant, calm and cutting. You were never officially his mother. I didn't do anything the courts didn't sign off on. You just want attention. By midnight, the first video had over 12,000 views. By sunrise, 48,000. Comments flooded in. This broke me. My stepmom raised me. This is the opposite of her. Imagine erasing someone who fed you, clothed you, stayed when everyone else left. This is what emotional theft looks like. Linda didn't respond to any of it. She just watched, quiet, steady. The next morning, her inbox exploded. Journalists, parenting bloggers, a producer from some true crime-adjacent podcast. She declined most. She didn't want the noise. She wanted consequence. By noon, Sharon called. Not to apologize, not even to explain, but to threaten. You've crossed a line, Linda, she hissed. You think you're winning? You don't even know what defamation means. Linda was at her kitchen sink, rinsing a coffee mug. She put it down gently and pressed speaker. Do you want to sue me? She asked flat. You posted private audio, without consent. Linda picked up her phone, calmly scrolling. Actually, Ohio is a one-party consent state. You should have picked a restaurant in Kentucky. Silence. Linda opened another file and kept scrolling. Besides, I've got notarized statements, court documents, timeline logs. Don't make me post those too. You'll ruin Ryan, Sharon snapped. No, Linda said. You already did. Click. The call ended. Linda stood there for a moment, hand resting against the fridge, eyes catching her own reflection in the dark microwave glass. She didn't look angry or triumphant, just exhausted. She was still staring at that blank expression when her niece Jordan knocked on the back door. 24, tattoos up both arms, and a spirit like sandpaper. Jordan dropped her bag on the counter like she lived there. You lit the internet on fire, she said, eyes wide. Linda nodded. Jordan pulled out her phone and held it up. But what if you did more than just react? I'm not looking to build a brand, Linda said. Jordan shook her head. Not a brand, a record. You've got the documents, the audio, you've got the heart. You could tell the full story, yours, Bethy's, Ryan's, maybe even the other moms who got erased. Linda raised an eyebrow. A podcast, a series? A real archive of what gets buried in the margins. Linda looked down at her hands. For a long time, they had only been tools changing diapers, folding laundry, typing resumes, gripping courtroom chairs. But maybe they could build something too. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. This time text, not voicemail. From unknown number. Bethany didn't die the way Sharon told you. I was there. She begged for one thing before she passed, and I think you deserve to know what it was. Linda stared at it. Her fingers hovered over reply, but didn't move. Who's Bethany? Jordan asked casually, pouring herself orange juice. Linda didn't answer because suddenly she wasn't sure she knew the full answer either. The text haunted her for hours. Bethany didn't die the way Sharon told you. Linda read it again while standing barefoot in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator blending with the quiet churn inside her own chest. The words clawed at a scar she'd never questioned. She had never pushed too hard for details about that night. The official cause, cardiac arrest, stress-induced complications, felt tidy, and grief made people accept tidiness like oxygen. But now she wasn't sure what she'd accepted or what she'd been handed. She drove 2 hours that morning to see someone she hadn't spoken to in almost a decade, Teresa, Bethy's sister. They hadn't fallen out exactly, just drifted. Teresa moved upstate, married a mechanic, got sober. Linda stayed where she was, holding on to what Bethany left behind. Teresa opened the door in slippers, robe tied crooked, face makeup free and raw. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said. They didn't hug, but they didn't need to. Inside, over black coffee and leftover cornbread, Linda finally asked, "What happened to her, Teresa? Really?" Teresa didn't dodge. Her voice was hoarse, low, and it didn't shake. "She collapsed in my kitchen. I called 911, but it took them 20 minutes. She didn't die from a stroke, Linda. She died from neglect, exhaustion, from being pulled in too many directions and ignored when she said she wasn't okay." Linda swallowed. "But I thought, Sharon told me it was sudden." Teresa let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Of course she did. Sudden doesn't have blame. But Bethany had been saying for months that she felt off, dizzy, foggy. No one listened, especially not her husband. And Sharon—" She shook her head. "That woman treated Beth like an inconvenience, barely even looked at her." Silence bloomed. Linda stared into her coffee. "She told me something," Teresa said softly, eyes glazing with memory. "Right before they took her, she said, 'If anything happens to me, make sure Linda raises him. She's the only one who will keep him kind.'" Linda closed her eyes and the room spun. That night, back home, Linda unlocked the old cedar box in her bedroom closet. The smell of thyme and lavender spilled out. There were photo negatives, tiny shoes, and one letter, folded crisp and yellowing. The handwriting, unmistakably Bethy's. She unfolded it and read it again, slowly, reverently. "Linda, if I'm not around by the time Ryan turns 16, remind him of his mother. Not the pretty pictures, me, the scared one, the tired one, the one who sang 'Stand by Me' off-key until he fell asleep. You know the parts I'm talking about. Please stay. You were always the better one at showing up. You don't need permission to be his mom. Just keep him gentle. Love, Beth." She took a photo of it and saved it to the same drive as her public statement. Then she opened her blog draft, added a new title, "What She Left Behind, a Letter from the Real Mother." Her fingers hovered over publish. But before she could press it, a push notification lit her screen. "Breaking, Ryan Langston responds to viral controversy." She clicked it, breath clenched like a fist. The headline struck first: "False narratives are dangerous, a son's plea for truth." Then the quote: "I am deeply disturbed by the campaign being waged online by someone claiming maternal status in my life. I was raised by Sharon Langston. That is not an insult. It's a fact. These claims are misleading and emotionally manipulative." No mention of Bethany, no mention of the court, no acknowledgement of the clips, the letter, the history. He doubled down. Linda sat frozen in her chair. For a moment, everything stilled. Then Jordan burst through the back door, phone in hand, screen lit up. "Aunt Linda, you need to see the comments on his post." Linda blinked. "What are they saying?" Jordan grinned, eyes wide. "They's asking, who's Bethany?" By the next morning, the internet had decided to care. Someone, maybe a student, maybe a stranger, had stitched together a new version of the graduation speech. The video was only a minute long, but ruthlessly sharp. Ryan standing on stage, praising Sharon, then the soft crackle of the open mic and his voice small and cutting. "She's old news. It's your moment now." Then it cut to the audience's frozen faces, a child fidgeting, a woman's jaw slack, Linda in the back row, still silent. Someone had added captions. "The real mother sat quietly while he erased her." It exploded. The clip ricocheted across platforms: TikTok, Instagram Reels, Reddit threads with titles like "The Mic That Told the Truth" and "Why We Erase Women Who Raise Us." Viewers dug through the public files Linda had uploaded. They found Bethy's letter, the court rulings, the photos. They filled in the blanks. Linda didn't post, she didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder now. A week later, she got an email from a nonprofit called Caretakers in Silence, an advocacy group for unacknowledged guardians, kinship caregivers, and second mothers. They'd seen the video. They wanted her to speak, a keynote, a platform, a campaign. Linda read the invitation 3 times before closing her laptop. Later that night, after dishes and laundry and 30 minutes of sitting alone with her thoughts, she emailed them back. "I don't want a podium, but you can have the story if you promise to tell it whole, not clean, not simplified, just whole." They agreed within the hour. Meanwhile, Ryan's LinkedIn bio went dark. A month ago, his inbox had overflowed with job offers, consulting firms, grant-funded research programs, one political fellowship in D.C. now, silence, then rejection. One company pulled out publicly. In light of recent disclosures, we are reevaluating our candidate pool with an emphasis on integrity and transparency. Another sent a generic withdrawal email. A third offered condolences in private and nothing in writing. Jordan read them aloud from her phone with the kind of glee only a 24-year-old could get away with. Linda didn't smile. "This wasn't about revenge," she said. Jordan looked up. "Then what was it?" Linda folded the dish towel slowly. "Correction. A letter came in the mail. Thick envelope, no return address. Inside, a copy of Bethy's death certificate and a post-it note. You were right to stay, and they were wrong to bury it." Linda stared at it for a long time. The signature was just a scribble. The postmark said it came from Atlanta. She tucked the paper into her files. That story wasn't done yet, but it was waiting its turn. That evening, she walked to the end of her driveway, sat on the cracked bench facing the mailbox, and just breathed. She watched a group of kids ride their bikes down the sidewalk. One of them skidded hard, scraping a knee. The other stopped. One knelt beside him, held his hand. Linda blinked back something hot and tight in her chest. It was almost peaceful until her phone buzzed. A number she recognized this time. Ryan. She didn't pick up, just let it go to voicemail. Her inbox pinged at the same time. A name she hadn't seen in years. Subject: Long time no see. A few things you should know from Sharon.L.Consulting@fastmail.com. Linda opened it. No greeting, just a PDF attached and one line typed into the body of the email. "You're not the only one with records." Linda didn't open the PDF Sharon sent. Not at first. She let it sit in her inbox like spoiled food in the fridge, sealed, untouched, rancid by proximity. Instead, she packed a box, then another. Within 2 weeks, her modest Ohio bungalow, the one she'd bought 27 years ago with an emergency grant, the same one where Ryan learned to read, where she hosted birthday parties with store-brand cake, was half empty. Furniture sold or donated, curtains taken down. She didn't tell anyone until the for sale sign was already in the yard. When Jordan asked why now, Linda only said, "Because some walls remember too much." The house sold in 10 days, all cash, no inspection. And Linda didn't blink as she handed over the keys. She moved 3 states south, to a sleepy coastal town where the ocean breathed like a slow animal and the sidewalks still cracked under roots. On a side street near the marina, a tiny art gallery sat vacant. Whitewashed windows, faded signage, salt-kissed brick. Linda bought it in full. No mortgage, no negotiation. She didn't want to rent space anymore. She wanted to own the frame. The first thing she hung was a black and white photo of Bethany holding toddler Ryan. Both of them caught mid-laugh. The second was a hand-painted quote in looping brushstrokes. "Some truths aren't loud. They're just permanent." By the end of the month, Linda had set up a modest scholarship fund, the Bethany Grant, for students raised by non-parental caregivers. Quiet kids, invisible ones, the kind she used to feed breakfast while the school bus groaned outside. She launched it without fanfare, no press release, no ribbon cut, just a check and a promise. The twist came, folded in an envelope postmarked from Franklin County Records Office. She hadn't requested anything, but someone had flagged her file. A sticky note in block handwriting was attached. "Thought you might want to see who tried to touch this." She unfolded the form. Property Deed Inquiry, 2019, filed by Ryan Langston, requested by on behalf of next of kin. The breath caught in her chest like a paper cut to the lung. He hadn't just moved on. He'd tried to reach backward, quietly, legally, claiming next of kin status on a house she was still living in, 4 years ago, right after a health scare had landed her in the ER for dehydration and stress. Back then, she'd brushed it off. A long week, a dizzy spell, he'd sent flowers, barely checked in. She'd had no idea he'd walked into a courthouse days later asking for her deed. Linda sank into the gallery's only office chair, the sea wind brushing against the windows like it was listening. She stared at the document again. He'd left the purpose field blank. It was the kind of move Sharon would have made. Slick, clinical, just shy of illegal. A beat of heat rose in her throat, but this wasn't rage, it was clarity. She called her lawyer the next day. "I want everything moved into a trust," she said. "No public trail, no names but mine." "Do you want to name a successor beneficiary?" the lawyer asked. Linda exhaled, looked out at the coast where a family walked by, a child on a father's shoulders. "No," she said. "Let it go to the scholarship." And that was that. The gallery, the land, the bank accounts, everything she built, everything she had held for years in her name was now untouchable. out of Ryan's reach, out of Sharon's narrative. Later that night, she finally opened Sharon's PDF. Inside, court notes, dated emails, therapist assessments. A few were real, a few were doctored, most were curated, some were dangerous. But one stood out. A scanned signature form dated 3 weeks before Bethany died. Sharon had submitted a guardianship application back then, preemptive, unsigned by Bethany, waiting to be pushed through in an emergency should anything happen. Linda stared at it, bile rising. 3 weeks before Bethany died, and one name had already been typed in the blank field labeled preferred caregiver upon incapacitation of mother, Sharon Langston. Her phone buzzed again. This time a name she hadn't seen in years, from Clay Doran. Linda. Thought you should know that document. It was almost filed until someone stopped it. Someone named Bethany. Want to know how? I've got the copy with her edits. You'll want to see this. The message from Clay hadn't even cooled in her inbox when Linda opened her phone again. Ryan's last voicemail still sitting there like an unanswered knock. She didn't replay it. Instead, she opened her photo library, scrolled back through hundreds of images, gallery sketches, scanned court documents, screenshots of emails until she found it. A letter, his handwriting, the one from sophomore year, folded around a homemade necklace and handed to her with a half-joke, half-hug. She took a picture of it. Then, in the body of a new text, she typed, "I'm not erasing you, but I am setting a boundary. You erased me first. Remember this." No punctuation beyond that. She attached the image, pressed send. The read receipt came within seconds. No reply. But later that night, something else did. A notification. Ryan Langston had posted to his public page for the first time in weeks. The photo was muted, him in profile, sitting on a bench in what looked like a park. The caption beneath it read like a legal brief trying to pass for vulnerability. "We all make mistakes, some personal, some public. I was young. I misjudged the impact of words. But I am committed to doing better, to growing, to honoring the complex family that shaped me." Linda stared at it, unmoved. The comment section was less forgiving. Too little, too rehearsed. Where's the apology? Where's the mom who raised you? Don't we all make mistakes your way out of this? You called her your housekeeper. You called her old news. Now you want to rebrand? Within an hour, the post had more backlash than support. The likes stalled. The shares didn't happen. Jordan texted Linda a screenshot and added, "Even the algorithm knows he's lying." Linda didn't respond. She was already back at her desk, reviewing Clay's scanned attachment, Bethy's annotated copy of the guardianship form Sharon had tried to submit. Bethy's handwriting was there, scrawled in the margins with a red felt pen. "I didn't agree to this. Remove Sharon. Linda is the one I trust." Every note initialed, dated, witnessed. Linda stared at those 3 lines like they were a final prayer. The following day, she got a call from Jonah Ricks. He sounded breathless. "You seeing the university board agenda?" Linda blinked. "No. They've scheduled an emergency ethics review. They're considering revoking Ryan's distinction status, retroactively." She didn't speak. Jonah kept going. "They're citing the fraudulent nature of his public representation. His speech is under review. The donor families are backing it, including the single mom from the Alum Fund." Linda let the silence stretch. He waited. Then gently, "Do you want to give a comment?" Linda shook her head, then realized she was on the phone. "No, but you can quote this. Go ahead." A pause. "I'm not the one who failed him. I'm just the one who stayed." She hung up, then turned off her phone for the rest of the day. That night, under the soft buzz of gallery string lights, Linda sat on a stool sipping peppermint tea. Her inbox chimed again, an alert from the trust firm. All transfers finalized, her legacy secured. She smiled once, barely, but the piece was short. An envelope slid through the door's mail slot. Hand-delivered, no postmark. Inside was a single photo of Bethany in a hospital bed. Her eyes wide, not in pain, but fear. On the back, written in sharp black ink, "She knew, and she told someone. The question is, who still remembers?" It was a conference room, not a theater. Carpeted in muted gray, ceiling tiles humming under fluorescent lights, chairs lined up with mechanical symmetry. Not glamorous, not broadcasted, but packed. The event was hosted by caretakers in silence, 5 years after the speech, 5 years since the graduation that went viral without permission. Now Linda stood behind a podium she hadn't asked for, her notes in a folded pamphlet clutched in one hand, reading glasses resting on the edge of her nose. She was older now. Her hair had settled into soft white streaks. The gallery in the coastal town still stood, modest but steady. The scholarship had sent 32 students to college. Her name had become a kind of whisper in quiet corners of the internet, a symbol of dignity, of staying. And yet she had never spoken like this. Not in public, not on record, until now. She didn't start with pleasantries. She started with a name, Bethany. The room quieted even more. She was Ryan's biological mother, my friend. She once told me that if anything happened to her, I should remind her son of the real her, the tired one, the one who sang badly, the one who asked for help. A pause. I tried. She looked out at the crowd. Not just caregivers and social workers, but people in denim jackets and tired eyes, women who looked like they hadn't slept in years, men gripping tote bags like lifelines, college students, retirees, a few empty chairs filled by ghosts. There are women like Bethany everywhere, and there are people like me, those who stepped in quietly. We are in the photos, but not in the captions. We're thanked vaguely or not at all. We make casseroles, we cover shifts, we sign school forms with shaky pens while someone else's name gets called. A few heads nodded, a few eyes welled. Linda's voice didn't shake. It had taken her years to find it, and now it wasn't going anywhere. We talk about success like it belongs only to the people who finished the race, but someone filled their water bottles, someone tied their shoes, someone stood on the sidelines without a name tag. She folded her notes. Let them rest. So this is for them, for the people who stayed. Silence, then applause, real, raw, scattered at first, then rising, hands clapping harder, some standing, some crying, the kind that didn't need a microphone, the kind you felt in your bones. Linda stepped away from the podium slowly, breath tight in her ribs. She was halfway to the hallway exit when a woman, early 20s, face too familiar, stepped in front of her. She had a scar on her temple and a name badge that just said, Amelia. I'm sorry, she said, voice low and cracking. You don't know me, Linda smiled softly. That's okay, but I know you. Linda paused. I was fostered by the Langstons briefly, when I was little. Amelia's voice caught. You were the one who made sure I had a coat. I was 6. You brought it on a snow day. No one else remembered. Linda's breath hitched. You raised me too, Amelia whispered. I just never got to say it. And then she hugged her. It wasn't quick, it wasn't polite. It was heavy, like a piece of time being returned. That night, back at the gallery, Linda sat on the floor beneath Bethy's photo. A new package sat unopened beside her, hand-delivered. Again, no return address. She didn't touch it. Not yet. But on the front, in neat print, was a single line. The nurse who heard everything is ready to talk. She has the name of who silenced Bethany before she died. He waited for her outside the gallery, not with cameras, not with PR handlers, just standing there on the bench near the rosemary shrubs, hands in his pockets, head down like a kid outside the principal's office. Linda saw him through the glass door. Her heart didn't race, not this time. It moved like clockwork now, deliberate, unflinching. She stepped outside without speaking. Ryan stood taller than she remembered. He looked thinner, less polished, his once perfect posture bent slightly, like he was holding something too heavy. I didn't know where else to go, he said. She nodded once, neutral. I saw the videos, he went on, voice low. The speech, Amelia's story, Bethy's letter. I read everything. She crossed her arms. The wind off the bay tousled a strand of her hair. She didn't tuck it back. I was wrong, he said quietly now. I was so sure I understood my story. I didn't even question what got cut out. His voice cracked. And I've lost almost everything. The job offers, friends. Sharon's disappeared. Left town. I think she's afraid someone's going to dig deeper. Linda's jaw tensed. Maybe they should, she said. Ryan flinched. He took a breath, reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a microfiber cloth. I came to give this back, he said. She took it slowly, unwrapping it without rush. A microphone, the same model used at his graduation. He'd scrubbed it clean, polished it down to the mesh. Linda turned it over once, then twice. I wanted to talk to you, he said, to tell you I'm sorry, to ask if maybe we can try again, rebuild something. She didn't reply. I was so cruel and blind, and I thought maybe if I said the right things. Linda handed the mic back to him, but taped to its handle was a small folded note. He unpeeled it and read, Words matter. Use them better this time. He blinked hard. His face collapsed inward like something crumbling from the center. His knees buckled slightly as he sat back down on the bench. I don't even know where to start, he whispered. Linda stood before him, steady and quiet. You don't start, she said finally. You listen. He looked up at her, eyes wet. I was just a kid. So was I, she said. He buried his face in his hands and she walked away, not with triumph, but with clarity. She didn't owe him restoration, only truth. Back inside the gallery, she reached beneath the counter and pulled out the package from the night before. It was heavier than expected. Inside, a flash drive, a handwritten letter, and a name. The nurse's name, and the name of the hospital administrator who'd signed off on changing Bethy's intake records at Sharon's request. There it was. Not just emotional theft, but a buried decision. A death tilted toward silence. A paper trail of sanctioned erasure. Linda read it all. Then she flipped over the final page. On the bottom was a single handwritten line in looping cursive. The wrong woman raised your story, but the right one is still holding it. The call came from the trust firm just after sunrise. Linda was sweeping the gallery floor, the scent of ocean air curling through the open front door, when her phone buzzed with a name she recognized but rarely saw. Bradley and Sloan, Trust Division. She answered with a quiet, hello. The woman on the other end cleared her throat. Miss Morgan, we need to inform you of a flagged access attempt. It occurred at 2:18 a.m. through an unauthorized IP address routed from Columbus. Linda didn't speak. She didn't need to. The voice on the line softened. The system caught it early. No files were breached, but someone used credentials matching your deceased sister-in-law's former consulting domain, Sharon. Any names attached? Linda asked. The pause stretched. Your son's digital signature was embedded in the attempt. He used credentials from a document submission 2 years ago, likely from his former applications. Technically, that constitutes financial impersonation. Linda felt the mop handle in her hand tighten, knuckles white. Not again, not after everything. We've notified the authorities per protocol. You may want to consider a restraining order. She thanked them, hung up, and stood in the middle of the gallery's open floor, the morning light catching the streaks in her hair. Ryan hadn't listened. He'd begged. He'd wept. He'd handed her a mic like it meant something, but underneath it all, the old script was still running. Linda as resource. Linda as placeholder. Linda as optional. By noon, she was at the county clerk's office with a file folder and the name of her lawyer already on speed dial. The judge didn't flinch. By 4 p.m., the restraining order was filed. By 6 p.m., Ryan was officially under investigation for attempted digital fraud accessing protected financial instruments with forged credentials. Linda didn't watch the news. She didn't need to. Jordan texted her updates in bursts. He's trending again. The ethics board froze his transcript. Even the alumni page took his photo down. That night, Linda brewed chamomile tea and sat by the open window, pen in hand. She reopened her will. No names now. No ambiguous lines about next of kin, just instructions. Her estate gallery, savings, investments, was to be liquidated upon death and distributed into 3 endowments: the Bethany Fund for Emergency Maternal Health Access, Caretakers in Silence Legacy Grant, and a personal scholarship for students, raised by guardians without legal titles. She paused before signing, then added a handwritten note at the bottom. For those who stayed, for those erased, for the ones who held the line without asking for credit, let this be the record. She signed it, sealed it, filed it. Meanwhile, Sharon was gone. No public statement, no media appearance, just a vacancy. A neighbor in her gated development posted online that a moving truck had pulled away in the middle of the night. Property records soon confirmed it. Sharon Langston had transferred her estate to a shell company in the Cayman Islands and disappeared. Linda read the report once, then deleted it. By then, she had no room left for disappearance, only presence. The gallery hosted its monthly open mic that weekend. Nothing fancy, just folding chairs, thrift store lamps, and a stage made from plywood and resolve. Linda sat in the back, sipping ginger ale, nodding as one teenage girl read a poem titled, "Not Your Bonus, Mom." It ended with a line that made half the room choke up. You didn't claim me loud enough to be called mine. And that's when a man entered. Not Ryan, a courier. He handed Linda an envelope sealed in wax, no return address. She waited until she was alone to open it. Inside, a photo. Bethany again, same hospital bed, but this time her hand was held by someone off camera. A nurse's uniform sleeve, barely visible. On the back of the photo, in ink that had faded at the edges, was a name scribbled once and circled. Not Sharon's, someone else. And under it, one final note. She didn't just ask for help. She gave a name. And I wrote it down. The tide was low that morning, the kind that left salt-scored rocks exposed and seafoam curling like tired lace across the sand. Linda sat on the weathered bench at the edge of her rented cottage porch, a thick gray cardigan wrapped tight across her frame, a steaming mug of lemon water beside her, and a battered digital recorder in hand. She pressed record. No script, no rehearsed voice, just truth. "This is for nobody, and maybe everybody," she said, "mostly for me." The waves rolled in. A gull shrieked somewhere in the wind. I didn't raise Ryan because I had to. I did it because Bethany asked, because someone had to stay while everyone else debated custody and cleaned up resumes. I sang lullabies off key. I cleaned vomit out of car seats. I explained death when he was 7 and the goldfish died, and again when he was 15 and thought I was going to... She paused. I wasn't legally his, but I was the one who sat in the ER while he got stitches. I was the one who clapped when he got his first A in algebra. And I was the one who heard him call someone else Mom on stage while I sat in the back like wallpaper. A sharp exhale. Not tears. Not anymore. People say motherhood is unconditional. I disagree. Love can be unconditional, but presence? That's earned. That's shown. She sipped her drink, eyes on the tide. They say I wasn't his real mom. But if you check the record, the lunches, the nights, the attendance sheets, the calls from school, then maybe I wasn't the biological one, but I was the better one. She let the silence breathe and then clicked off the recorder. No retakes, no deletions, just one long-held breath finally exhaled. She slipped the recorder into a drawer inside, tucked behind a box of Bethy's photos and the latest scholarship thank you notes. That's when the knock came. Soft, polite, almost hesitant. Linda opened the door. A woman stood there. Early 30s, jeans, press badge clipped to a lanyard, notepad in hand, wind-tousled hair. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind. "I'm from Public Archive, the Oral History Project," she said. "I know you've turned down interviews before, but we don't want a statement. We want your voice. Would you consider telling the full story?" Linda studied her. No cameras, no PR people, just one pen and the kind of silence that waits respectfully. After a long beat, Linda smiled. Small, tired, but whole. "Only," she said, stepping aside,